education, as I was saying, cannot be seen as independent. It is integrated with the society. It's integrated with a whole lot of things. This is one clear example where healthy learning or healthy living or hygienic habits and hygienic living actually had a reverse pressure on ensuring targets are built physically.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We have with us Mr. V Balachander, who is currently leading the sustainability agenda for Ashok Leyland as their Chief Sustainability Officer and President, Communications, CSR, and Corporate Affairs. He's a seasoned HR professional with over 30 years of corporate experience in leadership roles. One of the most significant achievements is the shaping of the Road to School program, a CSR initiative of Ashok Leyland in primary education in government schools. As an alumnus of Loyola Institute, Bala is a proud recipient of the Most Distinguished Alumni Award in the year 2018 at the Loyola Global Alumni Meet.
Welcome.
Yes, sir. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us. So to begin with the questionnaire today, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey in the CSR space.
Thank you, Arushi. Well, in terms of an introduction, yes, I am a HR professional with over 30 years of experience, but I'd be more happy to introduce myself as someone who's been able to and been fortunate enough to be able to make a difference to the lives of school children in Tamil Nadu. My education qualification is a master's in social work, but having specialized in personal management, I spent the initial years of my career in the field of HR. And even while in the field of HR, I've been fortunate enough to be able to influence communities and societies by an inclusive model where most of the recruitments that I have done, I've been able to do in communities which are under-resourced or probably underserviced. And that started my journey into this whole social work space or social impact space. And I've been able to carry that through my profession. Somewhere about close to 7 years ago, when Ashok Leyland decided to structure their social impact initiatives through the CSR program, I was quick to jump in and volunteer to lead this initiative. And while assessing what Ashok Leyland has been doing over the last so many years, we've been in existence for almost 75 years now, close to 74 years to be precise. We've been doing a lot of work around environment, around driver safety, around road safety, around environmental protection issues, around education itself, health initiatives. We felt it was important that we structure all these initiatives into something very concrete and make a deep impact rather than a very cursory impact across a wide range of activities. And that's when we engaged with BCG Consulting and we said, let us have a very, very researched approach towards our initiatives. And education did come up as one of the primary areas for focus. And from there on, we further zeroed that down to focusing on what form of education support that we could give. And that's when, after a lot of thought and deliberations, we said we'll focus on primary education because we were able to make an impact in the primary education space. It stands for Good for Life. And that's when we conceived the Road to School program. And this program is specifically looking at supporting the government schools in far-reaching areas or, far-fledged areas where teacher shortage, availability of quality resources, accessibility, as well as socioeconomic conditions of that are much below standards, so that the impact that we make really reaches out to the most deserving. And that's when we chose to go with this Road to School program. And here again, we very specifically zeroed down this program to focus on primary education for classes 1 to 8, and that we will focus only on government schools, and that we will stick to the governmental regulations and framework and the syllabus so that we don't stray away from the mainstream. So that is my journey into Road to School. It's been a very enriching journey. We started with 36 schools and about 5,400 children. And today in the 8th year, we are 969 schools with about 96,000 children. And this year, we have taken a very ambitious target of doubling this number. We will be adding another 96,000 children to our fold.
That's amazing, sir. Thank you so much for sharing about this incredible journey and the approach you've taken, which is a very systematic approach towards getting something accomplished in life, and especially when it comes to social impact. My next question is about the mission and vision of the programs at Ashok Leyland. We know that education is the best social leveler. Can you substantiate the statement with reference to the vision and mission of the programs you have at Ashok Leyland?
Okay. When we set about focusing on learning outcomes, because that was the whole program about, we wanted to look at how we can enhance the learning levels of the children in the government schools. We did, of course, we had a baseline testing, and we realized that many of the government school children, especially in the areas that we've chosen to work, were far below the learning average of the country. I mean, you have a ASS study which talks about what are the learning levels, and these are competency-based, grade-based learning outcomes. So we said, let's focus on providing supplemental education, and we said we will have an assessment done, and based on the assessment, we will develop modules which will, help us support the teacher, the existing teacher, to work with children who have difficulty, who have challenges, to come up to speed, and also, thereby increase the the class average. But what we realized were there were a lot of socio-economic challenges and problems that the child was facing, which was actually impacting his education. One, for example, the children were coming from communities and from households where both the parents have not been educated. They've just not even gone to school. Second is, both the parents earn, and they get to work pretty early in the morning. So the child is almost left alone, and it is on her or his will and volition that he comes to school or she comes to school. Third is, they are deeply malnourished, and their only meal, and probably the only reason they come to school, is for the midday meal. So we realized that education is very, very intricately linked or connected with social issues. Also, the fact is, in many of these communities, children going to school were not encouraged by some sections of the society. We have faced this in some of the regions where they felt that this was easy labor that they could latch upon. So come vacation time, these children would start to go and earn because it was convenient for the local landlords and the local rich people to employ these people as poor farm labor. And also it was additional income for the parents, so no one minded these kind of challenges. So what we realized was, unless and until we are able to address these social issues, we will not be able to resolve the problem of learning challenge. And also we realized that unless and until these children are educated, got to school, and taught some amount of self-confidence, self-respect, and self-understanding or self-awareness, we will not be able to sustain this program over a period of time. And that's when we coined this whole vision of, whether it's mission or a vision, whatever you want to call it, we coined this terminology that we will make an impact through education, so that education becomes a social leveler. Because we wanted to use education to bring in self-respect, self-awareness, and self-understanding in the child, so that he or she is able to stand up to the society and make something about herself or himself. So that's when this whole concept of social education as a social leveler came about. Also, it was important for us that the community starts to own this whole program, because we, as an agency or as a company or as a NGO, can support. But if this has to sustain itself as a framework, as something that the society should take up, the community should own it. And for the community to own it, we need to ensure that the community believes in this one. So even from that perspective of sustainability, we felt that education should be treated as a social issue and as a social strength. And unless and until it is treated as a social strength, getting the child to be successful in school and getting the child to stay his entire course in school is not going to happen. And there you have it.
Thank you, sir. You very rightly said that basically, that education cannot be looked on as a standalone subject. It needs to have a comprehensive approach towards it, because at the end, all the social problems are linked together. To ensure that children study well, you need to ensure their nutrition is in place. You need to make sure that they have proper wash facilities, to remain healthy, mentally and physically both. So that's a brilliant approach towards addressing this major challenge in the country.
In fact, support what just said, and since you mentioned about washing and hygiene, one of the biggest asks at that point in time was to build toilets.
It's very important,
it was a time when this whole Clean India initiative came about.
Right.
And there was a lot of talk around Swachh Bharat. So huge pressure from the society, huge pressure from the bureaucracy to build toilets. And we did a bit of study on that, because one of the strengths of our program is research-based approach. It's not like if there is some need, we go ahead and satisfy. We do our research. And when we research, we found that many agencies have put up toilets, but unfortunately, the toilets are not connected to a sewage system. They do not have a water facility. They do not have any facility which will help it, sustain itself over a period of time. There was no cleaning mechanism. There was no clearance mechanism. So all the toilets we could see actually close to 300, 400 toilets built, kept unused. So what we realized was there is no point in building toilets, but create the need for a hygienic environment. So we worked a lot with the children, more importantly with the community, the society out there, more important with the panchayat body out there, to ensure and teach children the value of hygiene, the value of washing hands before eating, the value of using a toilet, the challenges of open defecating. So once we were able to bring that value and bring that awareness in the children, we found that the demand for coming for toilets started to come from the society, started to come from the children, started to come from the parents. And we have, at least in one village, which we work very, very intensely, where with the efforts of the children who refused to eat at home, 13 toilets were built in that particular village by the respective villages. So today, when we go about the villages, when we go about seeing that, we see that the children have actually influenced clean habits, and thereby clean toilet habits have been able to be established in these villages. So again, education, as I was saying, cannot be seen as independent. It is integrated with the society. It's integrated with a whole lot of things. This is one clear example where healthy learning or healthy living or hygienic habits and hygienic living actually had a reverse pressure on ensuring toilets are fit physically.
That's very right, sir, because service delivery on its own will not yield you the impact that you want to see on ground unless and until you make people aware first, of why we are doing this and what is the impact that we are looking at. So that's very, very important. Moving on to our next question, you've already shared with us, and we are also aware of the impactful work being carried out by Ashok Leyland in the space of education. We would like to understand, in detail about the Road to School program.
Well, the Road to School program has 3 or 4 dimensions. Of course, the primary dimension is learning outcomes, which means we have a baseline and an endline testing that happens every year for all children. And based on their scores, they are identified and placed in buckets. So what happens is we first assess the current strength of the child, and based on that, we have resource persons, as we call them, who have been selected, recruited, and trained by us through our knowledge partner, which is Learning Links Foundation. And they are appointed one per school. So what their role is, based on the scores of the children, they work very closely with the principal to take out these children in groups, depending on their learning levels, and give them additional inputs or support initiatives, as we call them, or remedial. The technical term is remedial, but we don't call it remedial because these are more support initiatives. So they ensure and work with the children. And the success of this whole program is the documentation and the assessment reports that we have for every child. So as we speak, we today employ close to 900 resource persons, which means that there is an extensive coverage, and every school has got one resource person working very closely with the principal, and he or she ensures that the child is given additional inputs to the classroom sessions in terms of learning, specifically on subject and grade-based learning. So learning enhancement is one critical part of the program. The second critical part is what we call as co-curricular activities. What we see is being in the classroom through and through makes it very difficult for the child. We felt that co-curricular activities like creating a science lab or creating a science kit or a math kit where learning is fun, they are clay activities, they are wood-based activities, they are nature leaves, they collect from the garden, then they play with those in terms of numbers and in terms of. So what happens is we started to create a lot of co-curricular activities, which are very established activities, something. And there we pick out students who still find it very difficult to focus on the remedial classes to be able to come up to speed and learn in an environment which is interesting and fun for them. The third intervention that we have is extracurricular. activities. We somehow felt that sports is not something that has been given much attention, especially in the government schools. And that is when we partnered with another agency which is into sports, where they look at sports more as a self-awareness program or a self-awareness activity. So they teach collaboration skills, teamwork, confidence, competitive spirit, interdependence through various activities. So we bought a set of activities, or they partnered with us in creating a set of activities wherein our resource persons were trained in terms of, and it's not about competitive sports, no, it's not about running, it's not about high jump, it's basically getting the children out to get into some form of activity. And this one we found had significant impact on the children, because the children suddenly felt that they could play, have fun in school. So starting with curriculum, co-curriculum, and with extracurriculum, we've been able to create a lot of interest. And we suddenly realized after sports came in, we were able to retain the children, attendance improved, and the whole sense of confidence and camaraderie started to improve in the schools. In addition to this, we also have the fourth intervention, which is on life skills. Basically, we felt that if the children have to be independent in the society, in the community that they're living, they need to be taught about civic awareness, they need to be taught about civic orientation and civic sense. And also, more importantly, they need to understand ways of life, because they're also very cocooned in that environment that they don't even know where the nearest police station lies. They don't even know where the nearest post office lies. They don't even know what the post office does, because these are very remote villages. You should imagine that these sometimes there is not even a public transport which goes out there. So we started exposing these children, and the resource persons were encouraged to take the children out on nature walks, to take the children out to the nearest mandi when the mandi is operational, take the children out to the post office and to the police station nearby, basically exposing them as to what are the support mechanisms that are available for these societies to thrive. So this we call life skills, and this, of course, for a child which is from class 1 to 2, it's different. As you grow up, you know gradually take it up, and when it comes to 8th standard, we actually teach them what are the various careers that they can choose for, the various career options, the competitive examinations that they get into. So this also gradually grows in terms of their age and age related career choices that they will have to make. So these are the 4 key activities of the Road to School program.
So the program sounds very holistic in its approach to children's development, and as well as the part that it's not just right to education which is important, but right to play is equally important too. So
absolutely.
thank you for highlighting that in your statement. So next question is basically, are there any programs in place for children after they finish their education to equip them with needed skills for the marketplace?
Interesting question, and this is something that we've started since last year, but we were not able to execute it in its entirety because of the pandemic. We have something called the Road to Livelihood, which is essentially focusing on children from class 8 to 12. Because our program, if you look at it from its intent, is basically covering children from class 1 to class 8. So class 8 onwards, we now have the 8th year running. So some of them who would have started with us have spent almost 6-7 years with us. And we find them a lot more confident than most other school children. And we felt that we need to probably support these children. And that's when we conceived this Road to Livelihood, which is nothing but focusing on some fundamental. Basically, getting them aware of the various competitive examinations, getting them exposed to take competitive examinations, having a career guidance and a career assessment done for them. Because many of the children are not aware that they can go and work in a garment factory, for example. They can go and work in an ITI, for example. Because for them, everything is all about engineering, or everything is all about getting a degree, not realizing that there is a huge scope in the vocational space. And that's where we have been able to help them out. And also we teach them conversational English. We support them in special classes with physics and chemistry, because that's always a challenging subject. We in case there are no labs in the schools, we equip the labs with equip the schools with labs and scientific testing equipment, so that the children are exposed. Because in a private school, you have all these things. Sometimes you have a challenge in these remote schools. So what happens is this Road to Livelihood is something which is aimed at preparing the children to face life, preparing the children to integrate with society, because there are going to be no employment opportunities in their respective areas. So we actually also started an entrepreneurship program where they could either get into agriculture, they could get into agri trading, they could get into self-employment in terms of the dairy, they could get into self-employment, especially for women in the garment industry. So we are also looking at alternate careers for them, which hitherto have not been exposed to them. So this Road to Livelihood program is essentially getting them prepared for a life in perpetuity, especially in this competitive world. And one clear example that we can share with you is 76 of the children from the RTS schools, especially from the Hosur belt, are now being trained in Ashok Leyland Basic Training Center, where after a 2-year program, they get a diploma which would make them eligible for a job either in Ashok Leyland or in any of the factories in and around that region or any other region. We are happy that we have made them employable and we have given them something that they could hold on for life.
Very true, sir. I mean, like livelihood opportunities for people from the marginalized communities is always the only way out of the poverty cycle that they have been trapped for generations, because
Absolutely
importance
true.
of education, health, wash, having the opportunity to be able to work and provide for their families is a huge help to all of them. You are doing amazing work there. You already mentioned before that, because of the COVID-19, you could not launch the program in its entirety. Now, we all know that COVID-19 has adversely affected the education of children. What challenges did you face and how did you overcome these challenges?
Well, when most schools shifted to online teaching, our first reaction was to do the same. But we realized that in many of the households, there was no tablet or a smartphone. And more importantly, there was no network coverage. So while we felt that, or when we again assessed and took a study, 55% of the households had a smartphone or a device where we could reach out. But the challenge was network. And that was something that we could do nothing about. So what we said was, we will figure out a way where there is some form of physical interaction. And that's when, during the peak of the pandemic 2 years ago in August, we printed almost 55,000 worksheets, which are in line with the syllabus, but ensures that learning is sustained. Because we couldn't, we had to, play the line very, very carefully. So we printed almost 55,000 worksheets and ensured that they are delivered in the peak of the pandemic to the schools so that the paper pencil connect is maintained. So we were probably the only agency which was working in the pandemic, during the pandemic, where our resource persons, because they're mostly locals, ensured that they travel short distances. We got them permission from the various authorities to go. And the children practicing safe distancing were called to a community center or were called to a local household, where in batches of 5, 6, these paper instruments were administered to them. So when we did a study, which was in January, and when we compared this with the ASER studies, we found that the children who were engaged during the pandemic through this paper pencil exercise, as well as through a mix of hybrid learning through the resource person as well as through online, we were able to arrest the learning loss significantly better than schools which did not engage in any form of learning with the children. So even during the pandemic, we ensured that there is a connect with the RPs. Even the school principals were not able to travel, but our RPs ensured that they were there and engaged with the children. And here I should acknowledge the support given by the society, by the respective communities. And we frankly did not have a challenge in any of the community, because for them, children learning and schooling was very, very important. And with the support of the community, many of the community, the panchayats or the school management committee, as you call it, were supportive. In fact, they made the RPs very comfortable in their respective villages. They even provided accommodation in some cases for the villages, the villages for them to stay on during that period because they couldn't travel. And there was a lot of social support that we received to ensure that the learning continued. And of course, we have a lot of success stories to talk about where children would actually trouble the RP saying that, can we start the classes at 5:30 or 6 in the morning, because 7:30 my father will take the phone and go away. So we had in some cases RPs actually, starting classes by 5:30, 6 in the morning. So at least 1 hour, 1.5 hours of learning that the child could actually get through. And we also, in smaller pockets, had drives where we could, some could loan or some could donate their old smartphones, and almost 60, 70 smartphones were distributed to the children wherever there was no, wherever the households did not have a smartphone. So a lot happened during the COVID, and our only and the single focus was to ensure that there is no learning loss. We did not focus on learning enhancement at that point in time, but arrest learning loss, because when you don't come to school, you lose that connect.
That's really inspiring, sir. And in fact, a brilliant approach that you adopted, thinking of not at least letting the learning stop while, in any case, when you were not able to do the learning enhancement part of the program. You indirectly highlighted the part that the partnerships form a very important, part of the entire social impact work that we do. Now, what is your approach to partnerships for strengthening and amplifying the work that you have been doing?
Well, first 2 to 3 years, we were grappling ourselves. We were learning. We were trying to understand. We were trying to come to terms with some of the challenges. After which, we realized 2 things. One, our program started to show results. Our programs started to impact communities and societies. Word spread around, and there was a lot of initial support, or a lot of initial partnership options that were actually thrown at us. We were a little shy. Let me be honest. We were very shy. We were not too sure whether we should go in with this or not. But we realized as we matured that unless and until we partnered with local agencies, partnered with other firms, partnered with other communities, and partnered with other knowledge bodies, we were not going to expand. We were not able to scale up. So partnership now is fundamental to our existence. As we speak, we probably are one of the very few companies, corporates engaged in education, which partners with other corporates and actually get them to either fund or part fund our program. So we are working with JSW, actually in our health program. We are working with TVS and with Titan for some support in the local areas. We are working with a lot of knowledge bodies, like for example, Learning Links Foundation is our knowledge partner. We have Edu Sports, which partnered with us in sports. We have Rhapsody, which is partnering with us in music, art, and culture. We are now in talks with our own fellow group companies to fund our program. We are talking with Apollo, we are talking with Aster, we are talking with multiple corporates as we speak to ensure that they also partner with us. And in many cases, we've actually offered that we will run this program for you. We are now kind of turning the tables and saying that we have the knowledge, we have the experience, we have the resources. If you want, this is the impact we've been able to create. If you want to create this impact in your region, we will actually run the program for you. So partnerships are the key to success. We've realized it. We have experienced it, and we now wish to enhance it.
Brilliant, sir. Brilliant. Because at the end of the day, you have to work together to be able to really see the impact that you want to see on ground. Coming to our last question for the day, what is the big shift in the domain of education that we need to look for and prepare our children around?
Well, very, very simple answer to a very complex question. We need to get our children ready to face the world. Today, our education system has got certain very strong fundamentals, but the last mile reach and the connectivity is still wanting. So that has to be strengthened. And while strengthening that, we'll have to ensure that the long-term benefit or the long-term impact of education is realized by getting the children prepared to face the world, both from a career perspective, from a self-respect and self-awareness perspective, and also from a social perspective.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing these insightful pointers with us and, sharing your thoughts and your opinion about some of the very important aspects in life. It was wonderful to have you with us. We really enjoyed the discussion, and we wish you all the very best. And, to your team as well, who's doing this amazing work, we wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and great to have participated in this discussion.